This Week in Connecticut with Dennis House starts now.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Dennis House. Straight ahead today, Pope Francis laid to rest. How Connecticut Catholics will remember him. We'll talk with Father Glen Dmytryszyn. Hartford Healthcare partners with the University of New Haven. UNH President Jens Frederickson is with us to look at the future. A local mother whose son is in prison wants the law changed to help people suffering with mental illness. Denise Paley shares her emotional story. And we're also joined by State Senator Christine Cohen. The demand for home care is on the rise, but will Medicaid continue to pay for it? Tracy Wodach of the Connecticut Association for Health Care at Home has some answers for us today. But first, the lead. The death of Pope Francis. The cardinals will soon begin the conclave, the process of picking a new pope. But how will Francis be remembered? Joining me now is Father Glen Dmytryszyn of Our Lady of the Assumption in Woodbridge. And Father, thanks so much for being with us here today. I know it's a somber week for you. And tell me a little bit about your own experience, because you've seen the Pope and you've met him.
Yes, well, thank you for having me on, Dennis. You know, there's always a grace in seeing a Pope, because the Pope, we believe as Catholics, is the successor to the Apostle St. Peter, and he is the head of the Church. And he's the universal pastor of the Church. So when anyone sees the Pope, there's a grace in that. I was very blessed to be able to see the Pope in person a few times. The first time was back in 2015 in the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception in Washington, D.C., when he was doing his pilgrimage in the United States. We were there for the canonization of St. Junipero Serra. Then after that, there was the World Youth Day in 2019. I saw him in Panama. And then 2 other times I saw him both in Rome at St. Peter's Square in 2018, and then just this past fall, 2024. So
The expression on your face in some of these photos is of joy. Tell me what that was like to be that close to the Pope.
yes, like I said, there's a certain grace in seeing the Pope and a joy. And really, you know, in the beginning of his pontificate, Pope Francis issued a document, and that was kind of like the Magna Carta, if you will, of what he was going to accomplish as Pope. And it was entitled The Joy of the Gospel. And I think Pope Francis really brought that joy of the gospel to Catholics to see that following Jesus is a joyful encounter.
How should this Pope be remembered?
I would say he has challenged the Church to be outward facing, meaning the Church does not serve itself. The Church serves the world in having people come to know the love of God, revealed to us in Jesus Christ. And I think Pope Francis has made the Church, through his 12-year pontificate, more outward-facing, not just looking in on itself in its internal structure, but rather how the Church can encounter the world, how the Church can serve others, how the Church can show that it is a bright beacon of light in a very, at times, confusing, at times a very confusing and divided world.
How influential is a Pope in helping persuade a young man who has gotten the calling as you received? You got the calling when you were young. Pope John Paul II was the Pope then?
Yes.
What role did he play in you becoming a priest?
I think Pope John Paul II, for me, see, I'm Polish, he was Polish, so maybe there's an extra bonus there. Pope John Paul II, you know, his pontificate was much longer. He was elected Pope at a young age, and he had just a love for the gospel. Pope John Paul II had again, this understanding that the Church has to encounter the world and walk with people. And as a young boy, that was very inspiring to me. And then I, applied that and said, what do I want to do with my life? And that matured into entering the seminary and then ultimately becoming a priest.
So the conclave will happen after the Pope is laid to rest. What will that be like for priests as you watch that from afar?
Well, I always say when these conclaves happen, the whole world is watching the Roman Catholic Church. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And it's kind of exciting. I was just talking to my parish secretary today, and we were saying, what's the new name of the Pope going to be? Because when a cardinal is elected a Pope, he picks a name for himself. And so that's kind of exciting, and just watching kind of all the moving parts through the conclave. I'm excited. Yeah, that is that part of this whole. Of course, we mourn the loss of the former pope, but to see the conclave, commence, and then the election of a new pope, you see that line of St. Peter continues, and that deposit of the Catholic faith continues, as well as the safeguarding of it, which is what the pope is ultimately responsible for.
Is the conclave something you learn about and study in the priesthood?
Not really, because in 2,000 years, there's only been 266 of them, so.
So in terms of who will be there, right, you have to be under 80, correct?
Yes, yeah, the Code of Canon Law has a lot of regulations on how many cardinals can vote, the age range on there, and that's all set by the Code of Canon Law, which is the legal structure which governs the running of the church.
What would your advice be if you ever got the Pope's ear in terms of encouraging more people to enter the priesthood?
Right, so the call to the priesthood is an encounter that a young man has with Christ, to love him and to serve him as one of his priests. And our call to priesthood is rooted in a call to be a disciple, which means we follow the Lord, we listen to his voice, and we cultivate that understanding. So a young man who has a call to the priesthood must have, of course, a love for the church, a love for the gospel, a love for people, and a love to sacrifice some of the comforts and desires of this world and this very passing life in order to gain souls to participate forever in the glory of heaven. That's a very beautiful calling, right? But it's one that entails sacrifice. It's one that entails obedience. It's one that entails many things that require prayer, that require commitment, and ultimately devotion to God.
Father Glen Dmytryszyn of Our Lady of the Assumption in Woodbridge, we thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you, Dennis.
And when we come back, a new beginning for a local university.